am Michelle Gines, MG, the Reimagine Strategist, and I am delighted to have you with me on the Reimagine You Lab podcast. And here is where we talk about all things dealing with change. And for the viewers who are our viewers, for the listeners, hey, everybody that tunes in here, you know that when you come into the lab, that hey, we test ideas, theories, everything that you need to make change. You're going to learn from people who have done it. And so tonight I am talking to Shelly Bortolotto. Did I get that right, Shelly?
Yes, you did. Good job.
Welcome. I'm so glad you are here.
It's a pleasure to be here, MG. Thank you for having me on.
Yes. Well, you know what I tell you, and we'll just kind of dive in, but I want to give people a little bit of background because I think it's important to know who it is that we are talking about. And Shelly, you have a really amazing story. So before we really jump in, if you don't mind, I always like to go a little bit beyond the bio, if you will. So do you mind telling folks a little bit about you, but don't do your traditional sense of the bio. Why don't you tell us conversationally, tell us a little bit about who you are?
So I want to tell you really quickly some of the big changes that I handled in my life that felt like easy compared to this new one we're going to talk about.
Okay. But before you tell them about the change, tell them about you. Where are you at? Where are you located? How old are you? You know,
all the things. So I am in my super secret 40s, and I'm an Australian living in Canada. Okay. I'm literally a farm girl from Queensland, and I just came over to Canada 15 years ago for a season. I met a boy, like fresh off the boat in the first week.
I love it.
It was like a fairy tale romance. We dated, we bought a place, we got married, we had a kid. Like I never properly went back to Australia. So mum and dad come here to visit me.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Australia is somewhere I actually want to go. That's on my list of places.
Oh, you have to. The big difference between Australia and Canada is it is way colder here.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And I might be able to live without it. I'm in Tampa, Florida, and I moved from Missouri to Tampa because of the cold. So I may not want to do Australia too soon.
No. Australia is nice and warm. You'll be fine in Oz.
Okay. So, Canada is much colder.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I will enjoy Australia then.
So I started out in Canada, in Australia, as a supply chain. So think like numbers, buying, talking to all the people, Excel spreadsheets, love them. And through this change that we're going to talk about, I ended up becoming a coach because I figured out how to take charge of my own thoughts in my brain and realized how much of an impact that really had. Being able to just stop dumping on myself inside my head all day.
Yeah.
And now I help people do that for life.
Yes, I love it. You know what? Brain fuel. I think it is so important how we are able to change our brain. We can rewire it. Neuroplasticity. You're talking my love language. So,
So now we can get into the dark and dirty of neuroplasticity. It can go the other way as well.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So you know what, Shelly, as we kind of dive in, and I like to have these conversations because a lot of times people deal with change and they start thinking about their lives after something disruptive or something negative kind of occurs, right? And so kind of walk us through a little bit about change in that deep and dark and dirty place that sometimes we go, and because a lot of times people start there, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what that can do and how that has impacted you. So let's kind of get into the story a little bit.
Let's jump right in. So I experienced a change which for many and most people is such a beautiful, amazing thing in their life. My husband was literally crying with joy the morning it happened. Well, I was extremely nervous because I knew I had to climb up onto a table and get cut open.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a baby. I had chosen a C-section for various reasons. And in that moment, I started experiencing this change where I just didn't feel capable or adequate or good enough. Most people, when they have a baby, they love mumhood. Not everybody loves the late nights, but there's this sense of like connection to your baby and joy that you have.
Yeah.
I went pretty immediately straight into postpartum anxiety, but nobody realized or told me. Like, I went through a lot of counseling. I had a lot of sort of support in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a challenge with my breastfeeding. It's called DMER. It's called dysphoric milk ejection reflex.
Okay.
It's really important to talk about just briefly because people have it and doctors don't know about it yet.
Yeah.
When the baby latches on and the milk is about to start, it's
Uh-huh.
like your soul gets sucked out of you, like the Dementors in Harry Potter.
Really?
Yeah, it's this really wild hormonal swing that happens. So
Uh-huh.
that instead of breastfeeding being this wonderful connecting experience, it feels like you're just like on a roller coaster of basically being told the worst possible news.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
my husband walked in one day to watch me latch the baby on, looked at my face, and immediately just said, "Who's died?" Like it was that kind of visceral, gut
And he
wrenching.
could see it. And he
Yeah,
could
he could
see it.
see
Like
it
it
in
was
my
visibly,
face.
he could see it.
Yeah, and it's important to talk about because when we combine that because of body chemical hormonal thing with the body chemical hormonal thing of postpartum anxiety, it makes for a really rough journey for a couple of years.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and in that really rough time, my baby was fine. She's an amazing kid. I love her to death now. But in that time, my brain started to do this thing where it started to like question, am I a good enough parent?
Mhm. Yeah. And that's something that a lot of parents or a lot of people experience, that question of, am I good enough? Like that is something that people universally, for a number of different reasons, begin to experience. So yeah, so walk us through what that was like for you.
Yeah, it looked like a lot of unanswered questions. Am
Mhm.
I good enough? Should I have done more? Basically, the questions became, how am I a terrible parent today?
Mm.
And sometimes it would start the minute I woke up, particularly before I started getting treated for postpartum anxiety.
Mhm.
And then I did get diagnosed just prior to 2 years, when she was just prior to 2 years old. But in that time, my brain had rewired itself to just hate on itself.
Yeah.
And
Ye-
those things continued. So even after the medication kind of settled my physiological hormones down, I still had the habit of asking these really unhelpful questions.
Yeah. You know what? And it's so important, especially in this conversation, as we're speaking to hundreds and thousands of listeners who are tuning in today, where this is happening. And so we want you to look for the signs, like start looking for, and Shelly, as we kind of get into this conversation, I think that it's really everybody, in most cases, just like you said as you opened up, most people think, hey, we have a baby and this is going to be the time of our life. We've been waiting on this child to come and we're going to be in the most happiest place on earth because we've got this new baby that we've brought home. And we're going to be able to breastfeed just immediately. Everything is going, they're going to latch on and everything's going to flow and everything's going to be perfect. And it's going to be the best experience of our lives. And that's not 100% true. And it's not 100% true that you're not excited and happy about having the baby, and that you're also contending with some hormones and some issues with your body doing something very drastically opposite of what you may have thought it was going to be like when you were doing all the nesting and getting ready and setting up the nursery and everything before the baby came. but look for the signs, because there's some signals and some things that you might be able to witness or identify in your loved one that might be experiencing something as well. So, Shelly, as you were going through this and kind of having this experience, how did you kind of settle upon, hey, I needed to get some counseling? I heard you say it was 2 years in, you got a diagnosis. So 2 years
Yeah.
sounds like a long time. What led you to, hey, I need some help here? I need to talk to somebody, or somebody needs to talk to me. What were some of those identifiers?
So I was lucky. I had had a lot of support and counseling in those 2 years, but I hadn't ever had a counselor or a therapist say, hey, this is postpartum anxiety. I thought they were just helping me be a mum. And I just thought I just wasn't struggling. I wasn't doing it. But some of the signs that other people started to pick up on was that I was constantly trying to do enough. And like I'd be so tired, and my husband would be saying, just sit on the couch, like take a break, drink some water. And I'd be like cleaning the kitchen or doing something like that. And he would say, just sit down. And eventually I just blurted out, look, I can't sit down because then it all crumbles in. It all falls over if I stop. And I wasn't talking about the cleanliness of the house. I was talking about my brain. Like my brain would start, it felt like my brain was going to implode if I let myself rest instead of trying to continue to do enough and be enough.
That's serious. So you were overcompensating. It's like it won't, if I stop, it's going to stop, and it's going to explode or implode if I
Yeah.
stop. So I have to keep running. I have to keep doing. I have to keep working. I have to stay busy. I have to continue doing something in order for it to continue working. But that's really overcompensating for this
For that
spiral that the
feeling,
brain
yeah.
was in.
Yeah. And those are keywords like overcompensating and spiraling. And all I knew is
Mhm.
that it wasn't depression, because I'd had depression for a year or so, sort of 3 or 4 years before my baby came along. So I just knew I wasn't depressed,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize the flip side, like the flip side of the coin is anxiety. So the other really key thing that happened was I would drop my daughter off at work, or off at daycare, and then I would drive about 15 minutes up the highway to go to my job. And it's really hard to get yourself and your baby and your all the lunches packed out the door to work. So I dropped her at daycare and I would drive to work. And my husband one day was driving the other direction on the highway, and he saw me pulled over on the side of the road, just bawling my eyes out.
Oh wow.
He flipped a UE on a small highway. It was a safe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he got in the car. He said, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "This is just how I feel every morning." And then he said, "Do you drive and cry?" And I said, "Yes, sometimes." And he did the whiplash. He's like, "No, this is bad. You cannot drive and cry. You're a terrible driver. This is not going to work."
Yeah.
So he kind of got involved a little bit more then. And not that he got involved, but it really made me realize that like people are worried about me.
Yeah. The
And I
awareness.
stepped it up. Yeah. And I
Hmm.
I didn't I didn't even realize people were supporting me. It felt so alone and so isolating. And I even remember thinking that people were actively not supporting me
Yeah.
and saying some terrible things to people because I was so flipped around in my head that I just thought I was so terrible.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? I thank you for sharing and being so open about what you were going through. So, Shelly, in that moment, your husband sees you, and I always believe that just the right things, the right person comes at just the right time. So it was perfect. Him seeing you, being able to make that Yui and say, "Oh my God, there's my family over there on the side of the road. What are they doing? Did we blow a tire or something?" He gets in the car with you and says, "Babe, you're crying and
Yeah.
driving. Oh my God." there we've got to do something. So so what were the initial steps? Was it immediately, hey, I need a therapist? Was it immediately, I need a coach? What was it? What were those next steps? What did you do?
That bit was a little bit universal as well. I had a doctor and I had a therapist, and I
Okay.
gave them permission to talk to each other, and they
Okay.
did. So they needed to help me finish breastfeeding
Hmm.
and take like a month for the hormones to kind of subside down. And
Hmm.
then the doctor was able to properly diagnose me with postpartum anxiety. Now, I don't think you need to finish breastfeeding before you get diagnosed. I think it's all part of it. But the minute she diagnosed me, and it was really impactful, she's like, let's get you on some medication.
Yeah.
And I knew kind of how far I was down this road, that that was the right call for me because my brain chemicals just felt so completely out of whack.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? And it's interesting that it was the brain,
Mm,
that it was the brain psychology, because a lot of times people think immediately it is depression, it is what is it. So how when they were making the diagnosis, and they how did they correlate that it was the brain, that it was in the brain, and that's where we're going to start treatment? Because I think that's important for people to know. Hey, we've got to deal with what's happening inside of our brain.
yeah. So it's a little bit of a funny story. You know those like Clio or Cosmo magazines where you take the quiz and you kind
Yes.
of want to be in the middle, like not at way end, but you want to be like that person in the middle that's kind but not crazy.
Yes.
So I did this quiz. My doctor like pulls me to the side. She's like, "Come and sit in front of my computer. Do this little quiz for me." So it's like pretty simple questions, like how many times do you wake up in the night? How much time do you spend worrying? How much time do you spend doing this and that? And I'm like, so I score it, kind of happy. I'm like, okay, I got 14. What's a good score? She like looks at me completely deadpan and goes, 0. I had scored pretty high on the postpartum anxiety diagnostic instrument that they use.
Mhm.
And you could see the light bulb going in my head. I'm like, oh. And it suddenly hit me. That's what they were trying to tell me, that I was clinically showing enough signs that it is time to move to a much higher level of intervention and strategy.
Yes.
And I can only laugh about it now because it worked so well within 3 weeks. I remember getting up, taking the tablets, they were working. And I had about 15 minutes in the morning where I got in the shower and I felt normal.
Yes.
And I was like, and this coincided with my daughter being on her first sleepover away. So I woke up without a baby. I had a shower. I like was making my lunch for work. And I'm like, this feels easy.
Yeah.
And then I realized that the chemicals in the tablets were working in and my brain was starting to get better.
You know what? I know a lot of people often will say, hey, I don't want to medicate. I don't want to, I want to do things naturally. I can do this on my own. And hey, we subscribe to whatever works for you and whatever methods that individuals want to use for themselves to make themselves well. But I always say it's important, one, to get another opinion, right? Like we always say, get another opinion. Like do the assessments, because sometimes it's almost like you have to stand outside of yourself, like, and sometimes somebody else has to call it for us, right? Like we can't, how you watch
Mm-hmm.
the is it the, I don't know which product it is, but there's a product that says, hey, I didn't say that, no, you said that, and yes you did, let's watch the replay. It's, and you have to go back, if you can watch yourself, and it's like you need to stand outside of yourself to be able to see what someone else is saying, or see what might be happening with you, and be objective about it. So the assessment was able to help you do that, right? Like you're okay, oh yeah, I can just take a little quiz. And you take the quiz, and then you're like, oh, the light bulb goes off, like, because as a person, we can see it. Sometimes we can see it for other people, but it's hard to see it for ourselves until we kind of have that objective moment where it's like we can stand outside of ourselves to really be able to see ourselves and see that, you know what, maybe a different form, getting that other opinion. Hey, maybe a medication can help me,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
and I think so many people listening will have so many different opinions on medication. And I want to share the choice I made and why.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
because it was explained to me so well and quote unquote packaged in a way that made it really feel very safe
Yeah,
and very temporary. I actually, it's the one
yeah,
time Dr. Google helps. I Google like postpartum anxiety, and the
yeah.
one top result that comes up that just says postpartum anxiety is temporary and treatable with professional help.
Mhm. Yeah,
And it's so important for people to hear because it is treatable. You will not feel this way for the rest of your life, I promise you.
yeah.
But it is
That's
it is
key.
necessary to get treated because it will kind of, that spiral pattern in
Mhm.
your brain will continue unless you actually actively work to undo it.
Yeah,
Whether that's
yeah,
with medication, counseling, lots of activity, whatever works for you. So the doctor explained it. She said, look, you need to take some medication. It's like your car gas tank is not empty. You cannot keep driving on empty. We need to put the gas back in.
yeah.
And she said, look, it's going to be probably 6-ish months, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. It's going to take about 3 or 4 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks for it to start working. You'll start feeling it working. And we're going to meet with you and manage this every step of the way. I'm like, okay, it's temporary. I can handle it. I won't be on medication forever.
Mhm.
And it's going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so you were on medication for how long?
About 6 months, give or take.
Okay. So about 6 months, give or take. And it worked for you. Like you said, in a few weeks, 3 weeks or so, you wake up, you get in the shower, and you're fixing lunch to go to work, and you're feeling like a new person, a
It, it,
normal.
it was one of those moments I'm like, I realized how hard it was to feel like I'm walking through like mud or quicksand every day, all day for so long. I'm like, oh, my brain works again. Like I can just make a decision and get stuff done versus trying to struggle through everything. And
Yeah.
that kind of started to get longer and longer. So some days would be really great, some days would be tough. Sleep helped, good nutrition helped, not having as much stress helped, but it did get better. And then the other things that really helped
Mhm.
was really proactively starting to tell people about it.
Yeah.
And to tell people without that embarrassment. I didn't have to whisper it, I just had to start that conversation about mental health. This
Yeah.
is about 6 years ago, so this is pre COVID. People didn't talk about it a lot. But I went and told my boss, I said, just so you know, I've been diagnosed properly with postpartum anxiety.
Yeah.
Now, no one was really surprised because they'd kind of watched me struggle for a while, but it helped them for me to start that conversation because then they had words for it and they could start asking things like, how are you feeling today? Or checking in, how's the medication doing? Like, I was very open with it, but I was also able to ask for extra accommodations.
Yeah.
So at one point, I just said, look, can I have every second Friday afternoon off for my own mental health? And they said yes.
Yeah. And that's a difference maker.
It
You know,
became, yeah, the thing I looked forward to every second weekend. I was like, oh, I get the afternoon to myself because my daughter was still in daycare. So I had like 4 hours where I could just sit in the sun and not rush back to pick her up so that I didn't get charged the overdue pickup fees.
yeah. You know what? And I think what's really important about that is that once you know what it is that you're dealing with, how to manage it, how to work through it, how to kind of overcome it, then you can be an advocate not only for yourself, I mean, you become an advocate for you, right? So you can say, you can talk to people about it, have those conversations and dialogue. And then you can say, hey, I need some accommodations, because often we try to be the superhero. We try to do as much as we can. Like you were even talking about, hey, that overcompensating, I'm doing as much as I can, and you're running on empty, and you can't. And in order for me to be the best employee, the best mother, the best wife, and all those things, all those hats that we wear, we have to be able to take good care of ourselves so that we can be the very best version of ourselves.
MG, I want to talk about the two kind of parts of this. So the first part, what I call like discovery and active recovery, it
Yes.
all kind of took me up till about, my daughter was about 3 years old at the time. So that kind of worked. But right in the middle of that, I actually got restructured from my job. So I lost that sense of self-worth that I was getting from my job, which isn't where we want to get our self-worth from, but we all do
No.
it.
Yep.
So I was sort of felt like my brain was better and I could function and show up and do things. And I realized that I had become this unconfident, doubting, worrisome person, which I wasn't really before.
Yeah.
So, but that's that neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity. My brain had 2 years unchecked, just run rampant through my life and decide that I'm terrible at everything.
Yes.
And I had to unwrite that. So this is where I went into what I call the shoulds phase. So I was technically recovered because I was off the medication and I wasn't getting like supervised therapy and stuff like that. Not supervised, but they weren't making me come back every week just to check on me. But I had to like stop telling myself all the shoulds and living in all the shame and guilt that comes from when you think I should be a better parent.
That's a hard thing. Like in getting past that. Like that's so important, because we can't live in that space. We can't stay in a space like that and soar and be the people that we really want to be. So I want to get to, because I know that with you being a life coach now, that there's a lot of teaching and sharing and people that you help, because you've had this road to have traveled. You have this as an experience, a lived experience, that now you help others. So Shelly, tell us about what you're doing now and how you're helping and coaching other people through these types of challenges, and getting their lives and their brains in a place where they can coexist with themselves in a much better space.
Because I know what it's like to have everything just fall in a heap and feel
Yep.
like you need to pick it all back up again. That's what I do for other people. So usually when my clients come to me, they feel some version of insufficient, inadequate, unworthy, either
Those
have never
insecurities.
yeah,
Yep.
either have never been confident in their life, or like you said, something has happened and it's completely bombshelled their confidence.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we unpack it and I help them understand that they're having thoughts that create emotions. When we have emotions, that either drives us to do things or it drives us to avoid the emotion by shoving it down and Netflixing and scrolling and social media and other things that numb our emotions.
Yes.
And when people coach with me, it's different to therapy. Therapy is about validating and telling your story and moving through that like kind of traumatic time in their life. And then coaching is different. Coaching is I'm going to just neutrally be that outside third person. So we take what's in your brain and we put it down in front of us and we're like, okay, when you think this, you feel. When you feel shame, you don't do the things you want to do in your life.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to learn the skills to look at the thought in your head, name and identify the feeling, and then have those tools to both allow the feelings so they don't bubble up and get big so you don't get in that spiral. And
Yeah.
also to find those thoughts that are the intentional ones that you want to latch onto.
I love that. I love that. I know with clients that I coach, it's when I talk about brain fuel, I always think you have to fill the brain with the things that it needs to be able to move like a rocket to the life that you desire to have, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to, in dealing with our lives in such a way that we can't let our feelings rule our universe. So we've got to be able to understand them as you've shared and know how to contain them,
Yeah.
so that you know what to do with them, right? Who do you, how long have you been coaching
Been
now?
coaching about 3 years now, ever since I got my brain back myself, really.
I love that I got my brain back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
And it takes a great deal of courage to be able to look at those thoughts inside your head. That's what I do with my clients, is I really hold space so that when we look at all that gunk that's happening up there, we're not also judging and shaming ourselves on top of it. So we can kind of like give our clients a hug and let them just be like, okay, this is happening. Yeah.
No, I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. So, how do, Shelly, I want people to know how they can get in contact with you. We'll make sure that we include it. So, do you have, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
So the easiest way is to jump on my website, which you'll pop in the show notes, I'm sure. And there's
Yes.
two simple things to do. If you're just dying to talk to me one-on-one and like get on me, get into my life as a client, absolutely reach out and just ask to book a consult. If everything I've said is resonating, I can help you 100%. And if you're thinking, oh, Shelley sounds kind of cool, I want to learn from her, then jump onto my website and join my mailing list so that we can start those conversations.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Shelly, now, if for those who maybe, we want them to definitely go to the website, you guys, definitely reach out. If something was said on the show that you need to be in contact with Shelly, absolutely make sure that you reach out and get in contact with her. Shelly, before we jump off, I want you to, what's the biggest piece of advice in terms of change that you would tell anybody listening today? What was, before we close out the show, I always ask, what's that one thing that you would tell people that maybe you weren't told, or maybe you were told at some point in time that now you make sure that you tell everybody else? What would you say before we close up?
Okay, so I'm going to jump in real quick before I answer your question and let you know that I love getting messages by email, but also the quickest way to just like find me straight away is by Facebook Messenger. Just Google Shelley Bortolotto, like search for Shelley Bortolotto. And if I come up, just message me. I love getting messages on Facebook Messenger. It's my favorite place to reply. And that one thing that I talk to all my clients about is, and I teach them how, is it is safe to allow a feeling in your body. And when we allow a feeling in our body and we kind of breathe it in and breathe it out, it goes down. It doesn't feel so uncomfortable anymore. And
That's good. I feel like we should breathe right now.
Yeah, I know. I always tell people you're breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe out through your mouth, that feeling, whatever color that feeling like it has, you're breathing it out and it never comes back.
That's good, Shelly. Shelly, this has been amazing. Thank you for taking the time. It has been my pleasure to connect with you, Shelly Bartolotto. It has been a pleasure. Make sure that if you want to connect with Shelly, you can DM her in her Facebook Messenger. Look up Shelly Bartolotto. You can reach her online on her website, and as well, you can check her out on Facebook. You guys can find Shelly Bartolotto. You guys make sure you connect with her. Shelly, this has been very helpful. I am so glad. For those of you who tune in, if you have not subscribed, make sure that you click the red bell so that you can get a new dose, a new episode every Friday. We come out with a new one, with a new Reimagine You Lab podcast. This is the place where you come to experience change, learn, grow, experience from those wise, witty men and women who can tell us about the change that has happened in their lives so that you can make change in yours, and they show you how to do it and live through it. So thank you for being with us, and we look forward to talking to you again next week. Bye.